So you were Joyce Skinner in
Yes.
Grand Rapids, Michigan,
Yeah. That was
growing
that
up.
was me.
Mhm. And how did you grow up? Did you grow up along with a lot of siblings, or?
I have one sister,
Mhm.
and I grew up in basically the same house. My parents bought, or my dad built a house when I was about 2.5, 3 years old. So the first house we lived in really wasn't, I don't remember much about that one, but he built this house and we lived there forever. My mom lived there until she was 90 some years old. So,
You mean the house you're in right now?
no, no, the house I grew up in is the
Oh, got it.
house. No, I live about 2.5 miles from where I grew up.
Okay.
I haven't gone far. I live about 5 blocks from the high school that I went to.
Mm,
So I'm a pretty much North Ender girl.
okay.
So,
And what was it like growing up there in Grand
well,
Rapids?
Grand Rapids is a strange city. It still is. It was at that time um, very white. Um, I've read a lot. I'm a history buff, so read a lot of stuff about when I grew up and things I didn't even know that was going on. And it was pretty much segregated. The whites lived in one area and the blacks lived in another area. It was also very, very conservative. Um, Jerry Ford lived here, grew up and lived here.
Oh, that's right.
We were his congressional district for many, 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 many years.
Hmm.
Um, I went to a elementary school that was a kindergarten through 8th grade. Then I went 1 year to junior high and then off to high school. Um, and they were all neighborhood schools. So to me, that's the best.
Hmm.
Grand Rapids isn't that way anymore. They don't have neighborhood schools. So, and my dad was a painting contractor. He had his own painting business and he worked out of the home. And my mom did his book work and all the things and answered the phone. So she was at home all the time. So I was really lucky as far as that goes.
And I'm
So
sorry, did you say your sister is older or younger?
she's younger. She's 2.5 years younger than I am.
Okay, so you're
Yeah.
pretty close together in age.
Yeah. Yeah. She was 3 years difference in school.
Hmm. Okay.
So
So you mentioned earlier that you're a history buff,
yeah.
and it was in a high school history class that you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Amazingly, huh?
yeah,
Yeah.
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 What do
Yeah.
you remember about? What do you remember about that class?
Oh, Mr. Daning, the teacher, he was the best there was. At least I thought so. I had him in 10th grade and 11th grade for history,
Mhm.
world history in 10th grade, US history in 11th grade. Matter of fact, he married later in life, married one of the girls in my high school class. So we got to continue our a friendship after he passed away a couple years ago. We continued a friendship and our love of history. Matter of fact, I have some of his books that his wife gave me after he passed away. um, US history is my favorite. So it was my favorite class.
Mhm. So
So
you said U.S. history was 11th grade.
yes.
Yeah, and is that where you met Denny?
Yeah.
Mhm.
He sat in the back and I sat up towards the front. And we knew who each other was, but he started talking to me. He said, "Oh, I hear you and your boyfriend broke up." I said, "Yeah." And that was, oh, maybe 6 weeks before prom. And then the next weekend, when I got home, my parents had a cottage at Big Star Lake, which is in Baldwin, about 90 miles north of Grand Rapids. We got home from the lake and he called. He said, he worked at the bowling alley. "Hey, you want to come up and go bowling?" And that's kind of how the whole thing started.
So you were at the lake maybe just for a weekend then, right?
Yeah,
Because
we
school was
always went for
essentially,
the weekend. Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah,
you came back from the weekend at the lake and he invited you to go bowling.
right. Because
And
he
did
was
you go?
working. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we
So
went
you
up.
were interested, right? There was something about
Yeah,
him that drew you.
right.
What
Sure.
was it?
The what was it about him?
Yeah.
I don't know. My friends would say that he was just my soulmate. They'd say to me, maybe he died, you know, early. You only had a couple years together, but you guys were really soulmates. And I think about that and I think, oh, that's kind of crazy. But he was just a great guy.
Mm.
He just was a great guy. We both were bowlers. So
Mm.
that was one thing that we both liked. Um, I don't know. He was just easy to be with, easy to talk to. Um, I he was just Denny.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Was he a good student?
No, he
Were you?
wasn't. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I was, A's and B's. He had a learning disability.
Mm.
He had trouble reading things and having it stick in his head and be able to um, take it out. Like he had really hard time with tests.
Mm.
He would know the material, but he couldn't really get it from his head to the paper.
Yeah.
So he wasn't. He would today. He'd be probably a special ed student getting special help for his reading. Um, but back then there wasn't really the help that they have now for kids.
Mm.
So he struggled in school.
Yeah. Was he athletic?
He was good at individual sports.
Mm.
You know, he was, he liked to bowl. He loved to golf.
Mm.
Golfing was his favorite thing.
Mhm.
In the summer he worked in the winter he worked at the bowling alley, and in the summer he worked at the golf course
Mm.
in the pro shop. So
Now, how is it that you two were in the same high school class, but you never met until 11th grade?
well, we he had a it wasn't that we didn't meet. It was just that, there were 440 kids in my class. So it wasn't like,
Wow.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
bigger than my senior class, which I thought was big.
yeah. Ours was big. At that point, um, the high schools, there was only three. They had to move when we were sophomores, they had to move the seventh, eighth, and ninth grade out of the high school into a separate building because there wasn't enough room for all the kids. So it was only 10th, 11th, and 12th grade in the high school.
I see.
And all the classes were like 400 kids.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that we didn't know each other. We just weren't friends.
Mm.
He had a girlfriend, and so that was, so I guess it wasn't that we didn't know each other, it's just that we weren't really, good friends.
Yeah. Yeah. You weren't running in the same circles.
Right.
So, how long was it after this first bowling date that you two were sort of a thing?
Well, he asked me to go to prom, which was about a month later.
Mm.
And then from then on, we were a thing.
That was it.
Yeah, that was it.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It was just like it was supposed to be.
Mm. So you were juniors at the time.
Yes.
So you had all of the following summer together and
And
another year of school.
right. All of
Can
our
you
senior year.
yeah, can you kind of walk me through that period?
Um, well, yeah, in the summer, he worked at the golf course and he had Mondays off. So he came over every Monday and we would do something. Um, who knows what it would be. whether we'd go swimming at this, there was a lake real close, actually two small lakes close to my house. Or, we'd hang out in the backyard, or, who knows what we would do,
Did you help him with his schoolwork?
Oh, yeah. Our senior year, yeah, especially English.
Mhm.
And he had a really good, I think she was first or second year English teacher. And she told him, she came around and said, Joyce can help you as long as you tell her what you want to have, what you want to write, what you want to put down, she can do it for you. And so I really helped him with English. We were both in the same human physiology class, so we did a lot of that work together. Yeah, I would help him with it, whatever he needed. And what we do is, at the bowling alley, there was a back room, and that's where the mechanics would stay. And then they'd they'd bring them to go out and fix the machine, or, get a stuck bowling ball or whatever. So I'd go up there, and we'd study in the back room, and I'd help him with his homework. We were also both in junior achievement. And so on Monday nights, we'd always go take the bus downtown, because that's where the junior achievement offices were.
Mhm.
We'd eat at one of the dime stores or one of the department stores, and then we'd go to junior achievement, and then we'd take the bus back home, and my mom would pick us up, and then we'd drop him off. And so that was our Mondays.
Mhm.
So yeah, I always helped him with his homework. So, and that made me a better student, because I'd
Right.
help him, and then I'd get it too. So
Right, right. So at what point did you two start seriously thinking or talking about a future together?
actually, on New Year's Eve, he asked me to marry him, and I was only 17 years old
Wait, New Year's Eve of
of
your
my
senior
senior
year.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, that was it.
What did you say?
I just was in total shock. We were at my girlfriend's house. Her and her boyfriend and me and Dennis were there celebrating New Year's. And he just, right in front of them, he said, I want to spend the rest of my life with you.
Oh,
And and I said, yeah, me too. So that was, from then on. And then we got officially engaged when he was home on leave after boot camp. And
so when he asked you the first initially, uh,
yeah,
did you have any idea at that point that he intended to go in the military?
no, and I don't think he did either.
Okay.
I mean, we were in that, it was 1967. So we weren't in that real draft thing. And
Mhm.
Vietnam was not the real, there wasn't a whole lot going on or in the news or anything like that.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until later that year, when we were downtown going to junior achievement, he decided he wanted to go in and talk to the recruiters.
So this would have been spring of 68.
69, 67.
Oh, it's
He
still
joined.
67. Okay.
Yeah,
So spring of 67 was
yeah,
spring of your senior year.
yeah.
Got it. Okay. All right.
And that's when he
And
decided
which recruiter did he go to see? And were you with him?
yeah, I was with him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, we went to the Navy recruiter and to the Marine recruiter.
Mhm.
Recruiter.
Mhm.
So one of his friends said that he felt as though he needed to prove himself. Now, he never said that to me, but this was one of his very good friends. And David said to me, Dennis told me that he really felt as though he needed to prove himself.
Oh man, Man, the Marine Corps sure is the place to do it.
I guess. Yeah.
So you think that the draft had nothing to do with his
No,
I mean, he
no,
wasn't.
I really don't, because I don't, most people didn't, I mean, that wasn't, people weren't afraid that that was going to happen.
Hmm,
It wasn't until really closer to the end of 67, 68 when the real draft stuff started.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Okay, so you two became unofficially or officially engaged, and
yeah.
then
For graduation, he gave me a pearl ring instead of, and so, yeah.
mhm. So you graduated from high school.
Hmm.
You are planning to get married eventually, and you
Hmm.
know that he is heading to boot camp. I'm
Yeah.
assuming he went to Great Lakes, or did he go to Paris
No,
Island?
no, he went to San Diego.
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that would have been how long after graduation?
He went, yeah, he went in July
Hmm.
after his birthday,
Hmm.
a couple weeks after his birthday.
And how old was he on that birthday?
He was 19.
19.
He's a year older than I was.
Okay. So
He
he
was a
turned
year
19.
behind in school.
He turned 19 in July
Right.
and left for San Diego.
Right.
And at this point, is there a wedding date set? Have you guys set a
No.
date? No.
No. No. We were just going to be together.
Mm. Hmm.
I wish that is probably the one thing. Someone asked me one time, if you could change anything in your life, what would it be? And that would have been either I wouldn't have let him go, or we would have gotten married when he was home on leave.
Hmm. Hmm. So when he left for boot camp, you knew he'd be back after.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because typically
Yeah.
there is some leave after that.
Right. They went, it was, boot camp, and then individual, I think it was ITR. And then he came home in November, the first part of November.
Okay. Of 67.
Yep.
Okay. What do you remember about seeing him for the first time in November of 67?
I remember running to one of the guy that went with him to boot camp, and he became really good friends with, lived in Comstock Park, which is just across the river from um, Grand Rapids.
Mhm.
So I live at the northern end of Grand Rapids, and Comstock Park is just this little village across the river.
Mhm.
And so he became really good friends with Norm, and he and Norm got off the plane together. Well, I'd known Norm because he was friends of my parents and my cousins.
Mhm.
So when he got off the plane, he gave me a great big hug. And I remember Dennis looking at me like, what the heck is she doing? You know? And then, then the next thing, we were just giving each other hugs.
Mhm. How did he
And
look? What do you remember? I mean, were you struck by his appearance at all?
oh yeah, well, I mean, Marines look cool in their uniforms.
Yeah.
I mean, sailors look nice in their uniforms too, but Marines really look good in their uniforms. And
Yeah.
they're so straight and tall, and um, it was just, it was just wonderful. It was just like, magic there.
Mm.
And it was like he was never gone. He was always there.
Mhm.
So, and
And
then
how long was he home on leave?
it was
Isn't it
he
30
left
days?
he left about 30, it was maybe 25 or 30 days, because he left and went back on Thanksgiving.
Okay. And how did you spend that time?
Well, I was in college,
Okay.
so I was going to school. Um, and then, of course, that gave him time to spend with other people when I was off at school. And we had a great big party for him. Um, a couple of my high school friends and I, we had this great big party for him. uh, and we just hung out, and you know, we went to the Santa Claus parade. That was during that time, his mom's birthday, so we all went out to dinner for his mom's birthday. Uh, and we just, whenever I wasn't in school, we were together.
Mhm.
So
So when he left at Thanksgiving, where was he? What was his destination at that point?
he was going back to San Diego, or back to Camp Pendleton, actually.
And how hard was that for you to say
Oh,
goodbye, to watch him leave for Camp Pendleton?
oh, that was horrible.
Because you didn't know at that point when you'd see him again, right?
No, and we knew he was going to Vietnam.
Oh, you did.
Yeah, he got orders. So we knew that before he got home. He got orders before he got home from leave.
Oh, so the whole time he was home, he knew he was going to Vietnam.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's an important detail.
Yeah.
What did you know about Vietnam at that point? Was it
Not,
what did-
not a lot, you know. I mean, you knew it was a war, there weren't a lot of casualties at that point. Um, but
this was right before Tet?
yeah, oh, yeah, about 2 months before, 3 months before Tet.
Mhm.
I was scared. I could tell he was scared. You know, we mostly talked about what we were going to do when he got home. You know, that we were going to get married right away, and where would I go to school? How could I transfer? All those practical things.
Did you guys consider at all? Did you discuss the possibility of getting married before he went to Vietnam?
Not really.
No. Yeah.
No.
And his job in the Marine Corps, he was a rifleman.
Rifleman. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
It's
you
just a
knew he was
grunt.
gonna, yeah, he was gonna be where the fighting was.
Yeah. And he sure was.
Mhm.
So, yeah. Um, yeah.
So he arrived in March of '68 in Vietnam.
No, he was there at Christmas of 67.
Was he really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And he was way up north. He was, he was in Quezon when, everything went crazy.
During the siege, yeah. So when
Yeah.
he left at Thanksgiving, and by Christmas he was there.
Right. He went to, um, a, training, some kind of training school. I can't remember what the name of it was.
Mhm.
And then they went overseas. So,
How often did you hear from him?
well, every day I would go down to the phone in the Commons in college and call my mom. Did I get a letter today? And actually, I really did. He really was good about writing. It might have only been one page, but he wrote me a lot. I've got all his letters.
Was it difficult for him to write? Or, I mean, I guess writing letters is different than writing answers for a test or writing an essay.
Right, right. You know, um, he just would tell me, what was going on, mostly what he was thinking and what he was feeling.
What was he thinking? What was he feeling?
Well, he would tell me, well, he'd tell me about they'd been out, but he never quite told me all the details of how awful it was, probably was. Um, he sent me pictures. He had a camera that he would send me film back, and then I would go get the pictures developed. He would tell me a lot about the guys that he was with. I mean, they were up on a hill. His company was up on this, on Hill 861A. And so, you know, other than, getting ambushed and all those awful things, and then he would tell me about, he would tell me about what we're going to do when he gets home. A lot of them are about what we're going to do when I get home and how many days it was. Um, and, I'm thinking about you. He'd write me a lot of one pagers, and it was always, how's school? How are you doing? You know, and then I'm really thinking about you. And then all sorts of crazy. He was a drawer, so he'd draw me things,
Okay.
and then you know send them in the mail, and it was free for him to
What would
send
he
mail.
draw? Would he draw things that he had seen in Vietnam, trees and animals, or what sorts of things would he draw?
Um, Gee, I should get them out. Um, a lot of hearts and things like love things
Oh, I see.
and
Personal things.
personal things, and
Uh,
then he nothing actually that I can remember that I can remember. I'm sorry, I can't really remember.
that's okay. That's okay. So, let's see. The siege at Khe Sanh was what, February?
Yep. And then he got wounded in March.
And
And
what do you know about the circumstances of that injury? What
they
happened?
he it was shrapnel, but shrapnel bad enough that they sent him to the hospital ship.
I mean, what were they doing? What was he?
Oh, they were up on the hill.
Okay.
They were up on the hill the whole time. The whole
You said
siege. They were up,
861A.
yeah,
Okay.
861A.
So he was wounded by shrapnel during the
Right.
siege.
During the siege. And
Okay.
they would go out on maneuvers at night, going to look for the Viet Cong. And that was at night was when the VC would, you know, do the most damage because they couldn't be seen and they'd sneak up. And there was, all sorts of, wire, these sort of wire fence. It was more of a circular thing that they spread out around the uh where they were staying.
The perimeter. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the perimeter. And so they would go out and you know and on night maneuvers, and then to hopefully get the VC that were there. So
Mhm.
that was basically what they did during that whole time.
So when he was injured, which hospital ship did he go to?
To the Repose.
The Repose.
Yes.
And did he write to you from the Repose?
Oh yeah, he got to write more, and he called me.
He did.
Yeah, that was the greatest thing. Yeah,
So tell
they
me about
had
that. Somebody
they
I could
had
just imagine, what that must have been like for you. What were
oh
you
my
doing
God,
when the call came in?
I was so excited. They had these like radio operators that they would get on this radio operation and operator, and then they would get a hold of a radio operator in the United States, and then they would then call the person in the US.
Mhm.
So then you would say something, then you'd go over, and then they would go. It was back and forth.
Mhm.
We didn't get a lot of talking accomplished because it was, they didn't give you a whole lot of time.
Because you're
But
relaying everything. But where were you? What were you doing when the call came in?
I was working
Working where?
at the bowling alley.
At the bowling alley. And did he call the bowling alley directly?
Yeah.
And did
Well,
you answer?
he called my parents' house.
Uh-huh.
My mom then gave the radio operator the number at the bowling alley. I knew he was going to call
Oh, you did.
because the day before they had called and said he was going to call the next day. And so everybody at the bowling alley knew. So they let me go back in the office and talk. And so, of course it was at the bowling alley.
Sure.
Of course I got a job at the bowling alley.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
So what do you remember about that conversation?
I just remember hearing his voice and just this really warm feeling, just it was like he was there with me. And of course I had to find out how he was and all that stuff. And just being able to tell him that I missed him and I loved him, and that to hear him say the same things, it was, yeah, it was great.
So, and we'll come back to the repose because I know that's
Yeah,
also kind of the beginning of a whole other story
another story. Yeah.
about Denning. So we'll come back to that. But after he got released, I'm
Mhm.
assuming he went back to his unit.
Yep, he went right back to the same group.
And where were they then?
They were up farther. Well, they were still at Quezon,
Hmm.
but just before they moved out to, but they didn't go someplace safe. They went up closer to the DMZ.
Well, the Marines, of course, they didn't go someplace safe.
I know, but
Yeah,
some people were in Da Nang, and
I see.
and
He
that was a
went
little
to
safe.
he went to Compiègne, right?
Yes, that was where they were, up near Cantillon,
Hmm.
the Hill of Angels.
The Hill of Angels. I've not heard that.
Yeah, that was the I don't know the nickname.
Hmm.
You know, yeah.
So they were occupying this hill.
No, I don't think they were. I'm not 100% sure. They were in that area just below the DMZ.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure that they were on. I don't think they were on hills. I think they just had um areas that they, because he wasn't in Cantillon. When he got killed, they had gone to Cantillon, and that was where they got ambushed.
I'm confused. Can you say that again? He wasn't in Compiègne, but he got killed in Compiègne. I missed that.
Right. I mean, their base was not in Cantillon.
Okay.
They were outside. I imagine I'm assuming they were out in the bush somewhere.
In the boonies, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the day he got killed, they were up doing maneuvers up in Cantillon.
Okay. And what day was that?
That was the 6th of June.
6th of June. So how long was he on the hospital ship?
He was only there probably 3 weeks.
Wow. So he went through the siege at Quezon, got injured, went to the repose, went back to Quezon,
Yeah,
and then it's all action, action, action
that's
from
all. Yeah, that's what I mean. He was, yeah,
till June.
till June.
Wow. Yeah.
And I mean, I know a couple of guys that were in his unit, not in the same platoon as he was, but they were pretty much up north the whole time, the whole year.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't remember who I was talking to, but there was one of the people I've talked to for the podcast. We were talking about a Marine also. Oh,
Hmm.
it was Diane Parisi. Her husband John was a Marine, and she asked him where he went for R&R. You know, Marines do 13
Uh-huh.
months. Everybody else
Yeah,
does 12. The Marines did 13 months.
right.
He asked him where he went for R&R, and he said he didn't. He was also in the DMZ. He said we didn't get R&R.
Yeah.
They dropped me off, and 13 months later they picked me up. That was it.
Well, and that's probably exactly what would have happened to Dennis, because he had been there. That would have been his 7th month. And usually they did R&R, in that 7th month,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know.
Did you did you hear much from him after he went back to his unit between let's see, he was on the repose, let's say March-ish.
Yeah.
So April, May, June. Did you hear from him during that period a lot?
Yeah. I would at least get one letter a week, if
Mm-hmm.
not two.
Mm-hmm. Anything change in the tone of those letters now that he'd been injured, now that he'd been through the siege?
Uh, Probably he was probably more serious than he was before that, you know.
I mean, by this time, he's probably lost a few friends.
I would assume he's lost several many friends.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't talk about that.
Okay.
He really didn't talk about that. It was more planning. It was more planning. Okay, we're gonna get married. And I don't know, it was like, I'll be home on this day and we're gonna get married like a week later. And those really, I mean, that I think that's what kept him going was,
I just love the it's like this dichotomy almost that you can't explain what it was that drew you two together. It just felt right. You were just soulmates. It's
yeah,
completely like beyond the scope of words. It's just pure romance.
yeah.
And then all of your conversations are totally practical. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. These are the dates. This is the plan. Right? It's like,
Well,
how could you
there
guys
was
be
other
so?
things in those letters. Don't get me wrong, there were other things in those letters.
I see.
But yeah, but
I
I
just love
think,
that you're that. I just love the duality of that. Right?
yeah,
The
you're right. Yeah.
romance that you can't even describe, and then the very, very intense focus on the practical.
But I think that he had to have something that he could hold on to,
Sure.
you know? And I think, I mean,
Did you feel that at the time?
I think if I would have known how horrible it was there, I would have been a basket case.
Mm.
But I didn't know how horrible it was.
Well, I mean, by April, May, June of '68, it's all over the news. I mean, you're
I know.
starting to see, you.
Yeah. And we had a, a classmate, he was a year ahead of us, who got killed in February.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to his funeral, and that was really, really hard.
Yeah, I mean,
Because,
you're seeing casualties reported every night.
yep,
Walter Cronkite by then has come out and said he doesn't think that there's a way to win.
exactly.
Uh, all of this, you still didn't feel like you had a grip on how bad things were over there.
No, I don't really. I have since said this to people. I said, if I would have known really what he was going through, I would have been a lot more afraid and a lot more
Yeah,
scared
yeah.
than
Well,
I
Joyce, I mean,
was.
you were a kid.
Yeah, I was 18 then.
Yeah, you were a kid.
I was 18.
So, in a way, maybe it was better that you weren't completely, uh, you know, horrified or terror or haunted by what was going on over there, because when he was communicating with you, you were able to be this sort of normal slice of home,
Right,
without being completely wrapped up in his situation.
right.
Probably helped him in
I
a
I
way.
would I hope so. I wrote him every single day.
Every day.
Every
We didn't even
single
talk about that.
day.
We talked about him writing you, but we didn't talk about how often you wrote him
I wrote him every single day.
the whole time he was there.
Yep. From the time he went to boot camp until um till I found out he was dead.
Can you imagine how much that meant to him?
No, no. I I hope it meant a lot.
I think it meant everything. I
You
mean, I
know,
don't know. I never met Denny, and I was never a Marine in
yeah,
Vietnam, but
right.
I have to. I can only imagine that
And he didn't get
that
letters
was that was everything for him.
he didn't get letters every day because
Sure,
obviously he was up in the bush and they bring him, they
right.
just
You might get a
helicopter.
stack at a time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But he knew I was gonna write him every day. And they may have been the stupidest things, but I wrote him every day. I got this much in bowling. You know, I've got, because I was bowling in a league, so I got this much
yeah.
in bowling.
Yeah.
And, I did this in school and da 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 da, you know.
Mm,
So,
amazing.
yeah.
So what were the circumstances of him being killed and how did you find out about it?
His platoon went out up in Quezon or Cantian, and they were ambushed. Uh, I don't know if you got to read Jim Kaler. He got the Silver Star that day. He was, I don't know what, platoon leader or something. He was like a corporal or something like that. He wrote a narrative of that day, which um, I've read several times. And they were on patrol, and they were ambushed. And there were 13 guys in his platoon, and 3 of them came back home. Um, so the North Vietnamese were very efficient. It was a firefight. Um, Jim told me later he apologized because he said he used Dennis's rifle after Dennis was dead because he needed a rifle. And I said to him, that's what he would have wanted you to do. He had no use for it anymore. He would have wanted you to take that rifle. Um, but he was one of the first ones killed that day. So, you know, it was, you know, rifle, you know, rifle fire, I guess. Um, that was on the 6th of June. Very strange because Norm, the guy from Comstock Park, his girlfriend and I became really good friends. Of course, we had something in common. Norm was over there. He was in Da Nang, and
Was he a
and
Marine also?
yeah, he was a Marine too. He was a gunner or something. Did things with the guns. Um, and she graduated on June 5th. On my way home from her graduation party that night, I was driving across the bridge on the river, and all of a sudden, I knew there was something wrong. I just had this overwhelming, my whole body shaking feeling that there's something wrong. I kept on, driving out and driving home to my parents. Um, that was also the day that Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. So I blamed my feeling on that because that was a crazy time. That was, that was crazy. And then he died on the 6th. Well, Vietnam was today in Vietnam is a day, it's across the international date line.
They're ahead of us.
So yeah, so on the 6th would have been the 5th here.
Mm.
I really believed that I just knew that he was gone. But I didn't know what it was. So the 10th of June, the Marines came to his parents' house and told them. And then his father called and told my mom, who then told me. So I call those 2 my bad luck days. Because everything that goes wrong
June
always goes
5th and
wrong.
June 10th.
June 6th and June 10th.
June 6th and June 10th.
Yeah. Everything that has ever bad happened, that's been that day. So
It must have been hard for you, Joyce, because
oh
as a fiance, you have no status.
no,
The
no,
Marines, if you were married, the Marines would have come to your door.
right. And I would have been able to choose things for him and do things. His parents really blamed me for this because if I wouldn't have been with him when he joined the Marine Corps and I was going to get to go on with my life, it was their way of coping, you know?
I don't
I'm going to go
understand.
on.
They felt like he wouldn't have. I mean, it was his idea to go see the
Oh, I
recruiters.
know. I
You
know.
just
I
you
know.
happened to be there.
But, it's easy. You got to blame somebody
Were you
for something.
supposed to have stopped him, or?
I don't know.
Hmm.
But yeah, so yeah, I had absolutely, I had no status. Luckily, he had a wonderful, wonderful um escort who really took a lot of time with me and talked to me and really got me through a lot of that time when once his body came home, and to understand, you know, uh, what it was like being a Marine there. Apparently, he had been there. And Matthew Wichakowski, his name was.
Now that's
And
interesting because Matthew, I mean, I would assume would have been mainly concerned with the next of kin, which would be the parents. So how is it that he spent so much time with you and
maybe he just knew I needed it,
he just knew? Mm,
you know. Um, and I had a lot of really good friends that were there for me.
mm,
And of
mm.
course, my parents and my family.
What did you learn from Matthew about being a Marine in Vietnam that was a surprise?
ex- exact things I don't remember. I remember going to lunch with him and, you know, him, just telling me, I think his experiences and, you know, sorry, I really don't remember exact things,
Mm.
but he was very nice to me. He was just really, really nice to me. And
Where was Denny buried?
he at Fairplain Cemetery. It's about a mile and a half from my house, maybe two
And
miles,
he was
not
just
far.
shy of his 20th birthday.
Yep, just 2 days shy of his, or a month, 28, 27 days shy of his 20th birthday. Yeah. Yeah.
When he was killed, but when he was buried, it was
Later, because
yeah.
we didn't find out till the 10th.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it was a week later before he finally came home.
Yeah. So it was very close to his birthday by
Yeah,
then.
pretty close. My parents sent me out to California. I had a really good friend that we were pen pals. And so they sent me out to spend time with her and to spend time with my aunt and uncle who lived in Merced, California. And I
Mm-hmm.
was with them on his birthday, which was really, that was very comforting.
Mm.
Um, but wasn't long afterwards. It's funny how people wanted me to do things,
Like
and
what?
well, like go to California for a couple of weeks, um, and go here and go there. Let's go to the movies, all sorts of, you know, let's get on with your life, Joyce. So,
Well, I mean,
I
the
mean,
direction of your life, you had a pretty clear idea of what that was going to look like. You guys wrote to each other about it in some
oh
detail,
yeah,
and now all of that is, I mean, that no longer exists as a possibility. How do you cope with that at 18?
you just go and do things, and I never really got over it. I mean, I never had the opportunity to just go through that grieving because everybody had so many other things for me to do,
Mm.
and so about uh, 10 years ago, maybe 12, Larry McCartney, which is one of the guys that would, when they were overseas, what they would do is they would trade names with people. If something happens to me, I want you to write to this person. Larry was one of the guys that Dennis gave my name to. So him and I wrote back and forth for quite a long time. He's from Toledo and he stayed in the Marine Corps forever. He was coming up towards Grand Rapids, so he said, "Hey, let's go out to supper." And we were just talking and talking about Dennis, and he said, because he had a really hard time with PTSD, Larry did, and getting through just life in general. And he said, I knew two people over there that I knew were going to be just fine when they got home. And one of those was Dennis. Because I said to him, I don't know. I mean, you see all these people that, how do you know that things would have been this wonderful, perfect, great relationship and life going on? And then that's what he said to me. And then he said to me, Joyce, maybe I had PTSD, but do you think that maybe you might have had PTSD too? Because you lost everything that day. You lost your whole future. And I looked at him and I just started crying. And I thought, that's what has been there all this time. That was what's always just below the surface. I date somebody, and what would I think in my head? If Dennis came home, what would I do? And I always knew I'd go with Dennis. Always. I never, that was always, and and so that was, just kind of below the surface of my life the whole time. And once he said that to me, things just got crystal clear. And that was when I started doing things and making, going to the wall and reading his name. And anytime there's something where you can put somebody's name in to be remembered or something, I always do that. And went to the walls. The wall's only been here, the miniature wall's been here once, but they had what they called LZ Michigan twice, which was for Vietnam veterans to welcome them home. So I volunteered at both of those. And it was like, that was what my life, that was the purpose in my life. I had a lot, I have 5 kids, and, 3 adopted and 2 biological kids. I've been married twice. I got married to the guy that told Dennis, if anything happens to me, I want you to take care of Joyce. So of course we had to get married because he was supposed to take care of me.
Oh, Dennis told him that.
Yeah, he told him that. He worked with him at the bowling alley. And it wasn't that I cared any less for Bob, because he was a great guy and he was the best friend a girl could ever have, but he was never Dennis.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever been him.
Right.
And he died when he was 45, and left me too. And, I thought, well, those two can go up there and just have great conversations.
About the bowling alley.
Mostly. About the bowling alley. Yeah.
Did Dennis's parents ever come around? Were you able to maintain a relationship with them at all?
No.
I mean, when you're at the wall reading Dennis's name, his parents are not connected to you at that moment.
No, I don't even think they knew I did it.
Really?
Yeah. I know that when the first President Bush was here in town, it was around the 4th of July, and there was a big parade, and they had a bunch of the Gold Star mothers. I know she went to that, but
You see her there?
no, huh?
Did you see her there?
No,
So
no. I
no
mean,
contact at all.
no.
Wow.
Once in a great while, I'd run into somebody. I'd run in. I have since, when Dr. Bird was, we are getting the stuff together for Dennis's statue dedication. I made contact with his sister and brother. He was one of 8, but 5 of them have passed away. They had all had multiple sclerosis. Yeah, MS, which apparently his father had too.
I'm sorry. Can I stop there? Are we talking about Dennis now or the doctor?
Dennis is
So
Dennis.
Dennis was one of 8,
Yes,
5 of whom had MS.
yes.
Are any of those siblings surviving?
All 5, no, all 5 of the, oh yeah, the 2 that don't have MS, that was when I was able to catch up with them and talk to them.
At the
And
statue dedication,
yeah, and
which would
that
have
was
been in
when
the 2000s, right? When was that?
that was not that long ago. Was
Wow.
it 5 or 6 years ago? Yeah, and that was when his sister told me that about how angry his parents were at me, because I'd never known that before. So, I mean, yeah, it's too bad, because I think that we could have probably been helpful to each other,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, Joyce, I do want to talk about I do want to go back to the Repose. Tell me the story of what happened on that ship besides the phone call home.
Dr. Edward Bird was the surgeon that was assigned to him, who, you know, took care of all the shrapnel wounds and, fixed him up. And I have pictures. I have pictures of him playing, hitting golf balls off the edge of the Repose. And apparently they just, for some reason, they had a connection. And I don't know whether it was his goofy last name. I wondered about it. Why would he remember Dennis of all the people that, he took care of on that hospital ship? Because he must have taken care of thousands of people. But they apparently struck up kind of a friendship. They Dr. Bird, of course, he's just a special person. And then when he left and went back to Quezon, of course, Dr. Bird didn't hear anything from him because he was off, playing soldier. And then, so about 2 months later, when they must have posted the casualty list, or they were in some newspaper or something, he saw that he had gotten killed. And he said that really affected him a lot. And it was like he was this almost ghost, or this thing that just kind of stayed with him about Vietnam. When he'd think about being on the ship, he'd think about him. So he went home. He was a neurosurgeon, did all his surgical duties and all these things. And when he retired, he decided he wanted to do something to remember Dennis. And he became a sculptor. So his wife saw my name on the wall of faces, because that's one of the ways that I communicate with Dennis. Matter of fact, I have to send him his birthday greeting in 2 days. And it had my email address. So he wrote to me and he said what he wanted to do. He had been making the sculpture and he wanted to bring it to Grand Rapids because he wanted it to, not only bring people to, to know that, everybody knows that people get, soldiers and they're casualties of war, but that there are casualties in their own community, and to remember him. And would that be okay? Like, of course it'd be okay, And so we started emailing back and forth, and he was working on the piece and sent me pictures and all these kinds of things. And so then I started looking around where could we place it? Where could we put it that would the most people would see, and that it would, I talked to my state rep, and she said, don't put it at the veterans home because you never know where it might end up. It might end up in a closet. And we talked to the people at this, then I talked to the people at the city, and I just checked all over. And so then he came in January so he came to Grand Rapids in January and brought it with him. Mm-hmm. It was a horrible snowstorm, of course, just, of course, horrible snowstorm. But he got here to change his flight, the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And I picked him up at the airport, and I got to see it. We had a great big dinner at the hotel where he was staying, and all sorts of my high school classmates came, and I invited his sister and brother to join us. And then we spent the whole next week looking at all these places. And the last place we went was Grand Valley State University, which is where I went to college. And they have a new campus in the downtown Grand Rapids. And the art director, because they have a huge art collection at Grand Valley, Henry Matthews, we met with him. And it was like, he said, we will take care of it. We will display it, and he went on and told us all the things that they would do. And I mean, that was the place. That was the place. So in November of that year, every year Grand Valley has a breakfast on Veterans Day morning for all their students that are veterans, and their alumni. Alumni get invited too. And so after that breakfast, then they held the dedication, and the dedication in that, it's in the same building. It's right next to the library, and it's a place where people go by all the time. Mm-hmm. And he made the statue so that it would be short enough for people in wheelchairs to be able to see. He wanted everyone to be able to enjoy it and to learn from it. And so
I have to say, I'm surprised it didn't go in the bowling alley.
Well, it probably would have, if we would have had a good bowling alley to put it in, that would have taken care of it. I mean, but the the university is a good place for it.
I'm sorry. It was just a bad joke. I just feel like,
Yes, and I mean, yeah, it would,
the bowling alley was like, the center of the universe for the two of you. And
right, right. Well, yeah,
so Joyce, what do you make of the fact that this doctor, I mean, this is decades later,
I know.
like to the point where he probably needed to borrow photographs in order to make the sculpture because he couldn't possibly have remembered what Dennis looked like.
Well,
So
he said it didn't matter whether it would looked like him or not,
so
but
I,
it did. But it
what do you,
did.
did it? What do you
Yeah,
make of the fact that decades later, I mean, this guy went on to have an entire medical career
exactly.
and he's still
And
thinking
this,
about Dennis?
yeah,
What do you
this
think it
one guy
was?
with a crazy name,
Hmm.
you know, it just, well, when the first time he emailed me, I thought, is this a, you know, some kind of a scam thing? Is this, a real person? Because I mean, out of the blue, I get this email. And, and I get this email, not nobody in his family. I get it.
Hmm.
And so I wrote to my friend Larry and a couple of the other guys that were with him and said, "What do you think? You know, do you think this is, And they wrote me back and they said, "No, I think this is real." Write them back.
Hmm.
And yeah, and he truly, you know, it was truly a labor of love for him. And I mean, he said to me, I said to him, we were driving down the road, and I said, "Thank you for bringing Dennis home. He's finally home." And he said, "That's just how I felt. I felt that it was important that I could bring him home." And so it was just a miracle. It was great, and to be able to, I had a class reunion like the next year, and so we would all go down and see the statue for the people that didn't live in town, because a lot of them that lived in town came to the dedication.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was special. It was really special.
Did do you remember whether it meant anything at all to Dennis that his birthday was also Independence Day? Was that a thing for him? Did he think about it much? Did you think about it much?
I did. I said, he he was, he was a hero that was, born on the 4th of July. Um, did it mean much to him? I'm not sure. I really am not sure. I mean, we always celebrated, you know, um, but I don't know that it meant as much to him as it did to me after he was gone.
Yeah, I would imagine the fireworks must be an emotional. If you go to a fireworks show or see a parade or all of that, it must be very
Yeah.
emotional for you.
Well, the most emotional place I can go is to the wall,
Mhm.
and I'll sit down there and look at my face in his name. And to me, that I can't be any place closer to him than I can be there.
How often do you go?
As much as I can. Um, when I was in the Navy, I was at the Bureau of Medicine and Surgery, which used to be just up the hill across from the State Department, up at the old Naval Observatory.
You were stationed there for a while.
I was there for one of my active duty training. I'd go 2 weeks every year. So I was there. And then I'd go down and sit with Dennis and have lunch. Um, and I was at Bethesda a couple of times, and then I'd go sit with him and go down there and because that wasn't really like you could go in 10 minutes and go, because Bethesda's a ways. And I'd been there a lot, many times, but late in the last 15, once I started reading his name, I went, and when they had, you put Christmas tree ornaments on the Christmas tree. Have you ever been there when they do that? They have a Christmas tree every December, and people can come and put ornaments for whoever that's on the wall. So I've done that. So, I would say I'm there every couple years.
So you've been many, many times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Joyce,
It's one of my favorite places.
Say that again.
It's one of my favorite places. This year in November, when I read his name, I was there to read his name. And oh no, his name went right out of my head. The guy that helped get the wall together.
Jan Scruggs.
Jan Scruggs. He was standing there, and I walked up to him, and I've said this to him before, but he probably, so many people talk to him. I said, I need to give you a hug, and I need to tell you thank you again, because this means more to me than you can believe.
Yeah.
And it is,
We didn't talk much about, well, in fact, we didn't talk at all about your Navy career. What year did you join the Navy?
I joined in May of 68.
May of 68.
Yeah, just before Dennis died, 3 weeks.
So, but you were at the bowling. Where were you when you got the news? Were you already?
I was at home. No, I joined the Navy Reserve.
Okay.
I didn't go to boot camp till August.
I see. So when you were talking about how everybody needed you, everybody was trying to encourage you to do stuff, just to take your mind off of it or move forward or whatever. Right. It wasn't that much later. You were no. You were off to boot camp yourself.
Yeah, I went to boot camp, came home, and started school again. Because school started in September. I went to boot camp in August.
What made you join the Navy?
Well, my dad was in the Navy, and there was something that told me I needed to do this. When Dennis left, I promised him that I would finish college and get my degree. He said, if I don't come home, I want you to promise me, you'll finish school and get your degree, and that you continue what I'm doing. My way of continuing what he was doing was to join the Navy, because there weren't many women in the service back then, but I could be a corpsman, and corpsmen are pretty much Marines, and I could be a hospital corpsman. And so I was in the Navy Reserve for 26 years and retired.
How about that? Did you travel much as a result of?
Well, I was in San Diego. I got to go see where MCRD is, at the Balboa Naval Hospital. I was up north at right on there's a naval air station. There isn't anymore. That's right between San Francisco and Oakland. I was there. I was in Pensacola. I was at Bethesda. I was at Great Lakes many, many times. That's just north of Chicago. I was at Mayport, which is on the ocean side of Florida. So I got to go quite a few. I went to New Orleans during the World's Fair. I got to go to the World's Fair in New Orleans because I was there during the World's Fair. So I get to go a lot of different places.
I think you and I may have been there at the same time. You're talking about the World Expo in 80, what was that, 84 maybe?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah, I was there too.
How about that?
Yeah.
I wonder if we saw each other.
We probably did. Who knows?
There couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 people there at that time.
Oh, right? Well, there was more than that.
We must have run into each other. That's funny.
Yeah.
All right. Is there sorry, what did that work? I mean, 26 years of being a Navy corpsman, what did that work mean to you? And how's it different than you think it would have been had Dennis survived?
I probably wouldn't have made 26 years had Dennis survived.
Mm.
Because back when I joined, um, once you got married and or if you had a child, you could no longer stay in the Navy.
Whoa.
Okay. So
Wow.
chances are I would have never made 26 years.
Mm.
Um, I it it was something special that I did that very few people my age or around my age, a woman did. But at that point, during the time I was there, it was nothing, I wasn't anything special or doing anything special. I was just in the Navy Reserves.
Mm.
Um, you know, and I went to reserve meetings once a month and on my 2 weeks every year, active duty every year. And I met a lot of really, really good shipmates. And I still have friends that I'm in contact with to this day that I met in the Navy. So, and it at my 50th class reunion, which was 6 years ago, they decided that they were going to honor all the guys that were veterans. Because amazingly, even though there were 440 guys and it was during the Vietnam War, there weren't as many people in the service that had been in the service as I would have thought there would have been.
Mm.
I was the only woman that
Mm.
was in the pack of guys. So,
All right. I really am going to let you go, but
okay. Did I
I,
talk too much? I'm sorry.
no, 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 not at all. I keep remembering other questions that I want to ask you. Um, and so I still have two more questions for you.
If I promise to answer in a short sentence,
The first one is about your just give me some thoughts on being a fiance rather than a wife when the news came in. Just the lack of status with the
yeah,
military.
yeah,
Tell me about that.
yeah. I mean, it that was really, really hard. It still is. Um, when I I go and read names at the wall, all of these sons and daughters and used to be mothers, there's not so many of them left anymore. Um, husband or wives, most, because there's only a couple husbands, but wives, they all have the gold star pin. I can't wear a gold star pin because I don't count. And I think that I has had as big a loss as they did. I mean, not as big a loss as a mom or a dad, maybe, but I did. I mean, I had a huge loss. I had a huge hole in my heart. Um, like I said, I lost my future. And I met this, I don't know if you've ever talked to Kim Palin, Pian, Pian. Her father died the day before Dennis did. And she was in front of me the first time we read names. And we have a friendship and we write back and forth. And when I need to have some support, I always write to Kim because she does. And she said, "No, Joyce, you deserve a gold star just as much as anybody else." So she gave me one.
Hmm. Yeah, you had a phrase that you used the first time we spoke about your status. Do you remember what you told me?
I'm a gold star nothing. Yeah. And I've several times I'd see on Facebook, just the other day I saw one who had um did a, a thing because it was his birthday. And I thought sometimes I'll email them or write to them and just, kind of comrades in arms. So,
All right. So now we're down to the last question.
right.
This episode, I have to put it together very quickly because I want it to publish on Dennis's birthday. So that's the day after
Okay.
tomorrow. So I've got very,
Yeah.
very short time to put it together. But given that it will publish on his birthday,
Uh-huh.
is there anything you'd like to say to him or about him in honor of his birthday?
Well, I will definitely be posting my annual happy birthday, Dennis. I love you and always will to the wall. And thank you, all of you, for having that wall of faces, because that is just just it it's wonderful. It's just a way to be able to, share, and I share things all the time, when my mom died, when Mr. Daning died, um, and I talked to him the other night. I sat in my bed. I have a senior picture at the end of my bed, next to mine. And I said, Dennis, I'm going to be doing this on Sunday. You have to be there for me and give me strength, because if not, I'm going to fall apart. And I said, I know you'll be there for me. And I guess I want to say thank you, because he's here.